Welcome to the deep dive. You're here because, well, you want to get smart fast.
Yeah, maybe prepping for a meeting or just curious.
Exactly. Trying to get up to speed without drowning in info. We get it. Today, we're looking at something pretty fresh, a new tool called ERB. It was announced at RubyKaigi 2025 just recently in Matsuyama, Japan, April 16th, I think.
That's right, brand new.
So our mission for this deep dive is simple. Figure out what ERB is, and importantly, why it matters for Ruby web development, especially if you're working with, modern Rails apps.
And we're drawing from Marco Roth's article where he introduced it. He laid out the context really well.
Okay, perfect. So let's dive in. Where do we start? The context Marco provides seems key.
Right. So Marco starts by talking about ERB templates, embedded Ruby.
The classic Rails view layer stuff.
Exactly. It's how you mix Ruby code into your HTML files to make things dynamic. Been central to Rails forever, really.
And as Marco points out, it's kind of having a resurgence, isn't it? With Hotwire and all the HTML over-the-wire patterns from Rails 7 onwards.
hmm We're actually generating more complex HTML with embedded Ruby now. It's not just sprinkling in dynamic bits. It's often the core of the UI interactivity.
So if we're doing more of that, the tools need to keep up.
Precisely. And that's where ERB comes in. It's a totally new parser built for this specific situation.
Because the older tools maybe weren't cutting it.
Well, yeah. Marco explains that traditional ERB tooling hasn't quite evolved alongside this trend. We have great tools for pure Ruby, like the Ruby LSP, but the HTML within the ERB, that's been a bit tricky.
Oh, tell me about it. I've definitely lost hours trying to find a typo in a view helper call that just breaks everything, an opaque box, like you said.
Right. Marco hits on that exact frustration, like trying to jump to the definition of a helper from the HTML. Good luck sometimes.
Yeah, or just getting syntax highlighting that really understands the HTML structure inside the .html.eri file, not just coloring the tags.
And knowing what HTML a helper like form with or linkto actually spits out, that ambiguity can be tough.
Especially now with Stimulus, Turbo, Hotwire.
Hmm.
They all rely so heavily on that server-rendered HTML being just right.
That's the core problem ERB tackles.
Yeah.
And it's not just a minor update, it's a full rewrite in C.
In C, wow, okay, for speed.
Speed, definitely, but also control. Its whole purpose is to deeply understand how HTML and ERB interact. So it's HTML-aware, has its own HTML lexer and parser. And it's ERB-aware, integrating with Ruby's Prism parser.
Okay, Prism, right? The new standard Ruby parser, so it understands both languages properly together. That makes sense.
Exactly, and Marco lists some really promising features.
Like what?
Well, it's error tolerant, which is huge, right? When you're coding, things are often broken mid-edit. It can still give useful feedback in your editor.
Oh, that's great, instead of just giving up.
Yeah, and it's also whitespace and structure preserving.
Why is preserving the white space and structure so important? Seems subtle.
It's absolutely crucial for tools built on top of the parser, like formatters or linters. If the parser starts fixing your code's layout or spacing automatically, how can a formatter reliably re-indent it? Or a linter point to the exact spot of an issue in your original file?
Okay, that makes perfect sense. It needs to see the code as I wrote it, warts and all.
Precisely. ERB keeps it exactly as written. Plus, like you guessed, built for speed for that real-time editor feedback.
And embeddable, too. You mentioned bindings.
Yeah, bindings for Ruby, obviously, but also JavaScript, Node.js, and even browsers via WebAssembly, so it can be used in lots of different tools.
Okay, this is sounding pretty powerful. Marco mentions it outputs a full abstract syntax tree, an AST. Can you break that down a bit? What does that unlock, practically speaking?
Sure. Think of the AST as a super detailed map or blueprint of your code.
Okay, a map.
It doesn't just see text. It understands the structure. This is an HTML tag. This is an ERB tag inside it. This is plain text. Here's an attribute. Here's its value. All organized hierarchically.
So it really understands the relationships.
Exactly. And having that deep understanding opens the door to much smarter tools. Marco lists a few possibilities, like building ERB-aware formatters and linters that actually get the structure. Or really intelligent language server protocol features.
LSP, that's what powers things like autocomplete and error highlighting in editors, right?
Yep. Imagine autocomplete that understands both your HTML context and your Rails view helpers. Or static analysis that can find complex issues in your server-rendered markup before you even run the code.
Wow.
Even large-scale refactoring of views becomes more feasible, more reliable. Think about automatically finding and fixing mismatched tags, or maybe invalid HTML nesting within your ERB.
Okay, that sounds genuinely transformative for dealing with views. It's like giving the editor a brain for .html.erbpf.
That's a great way to put it. It provides the understanding needed for tools to be much smarter about that mix of HTML and Ruby.
Now, I imagine some folks listening might think, hang on, don't we have Nokogiri for parsing HTML? Why build something totally new like ERB? What's the difference?
That's a really good question, and Marco addresses it directly. Nokogiri's fantastic. It's a rock-solid HTML parser. But its main job is to parse HTML like a web browser would. That means it's designed to be forgiving. It'll often try to fix errors. It finds auto-closing tags, moving nodes around to make the HTML valid.
Which is what you want for rendering a page.
Exactly.
Yeah.
For rendering,
Yep.
that makes sense. But for developer tooling that needs to analyze the source code as the developer wrote it, that autocorrection is actually a problem.
Right. Because the tool needs to see the original mistake, maybe, to report it accurately.
Precisely. ERB, on the other hand, parses exactly what's there. Whitespace, comments, broken fragments, everything. It makes no assumptions, no transformations.
It preserves the original source faithfully.
Yes. And that fidelity is what tools like formatters and linters need to work correctly on your actual view files.
Yeah.
They need to know the exact character positions in the code you wrote.
Okay, that distinction is crystal clear now. Nokogiri for browser-like parsing, ERB for source code analysis.
You got it.
So, ERB is this fundamental piece, this parser. What's the bigger picture? What's the vision for the future here?
Well, Marco is quite clear. Releasing the parser itself is really just step one. It's the foundation.
The real goal is the tools it enables.
Exactly. The primary aim is empowering better developer tooling, bringing that kind of sophisticated, intelligent assistance we see in other language ecosystems firmly into the Ruby and HTML+ERB world.
Like bridging a gap in the tooling landscape.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. Elevating the tooling for the view layer to match what we have for Ruby itself.
And he mentions some specific tools that could benefit or be built.
He did. Things already in the ecosystem like Stimulus LSP, Stimulus Lint, Turbo LSP, even the main Ruby LSP could potentially integrate with ERB for better HTML awareness.
Okay.
And then there's the potential for totally new tools built specifically on ERB, like a dedicated ERB auto formatter or a ERB linter.
It really feels like this could smooth out a lot of the rough edges in day-to-day Rails development.
That's certainly the hope, a better developer experience overall.
And how easy is it to actually try this out? Is it complicated to get started?
It seems pretty straightforward, actually. For Ruby projects, just add gem ERB to your gem file.
Yeah.
Then you can use erb.parse file and start playing with the AST it produces.
Okay, simple gem install.
Yep. And for JavaScript folks, there are NPM packages at ErbTools browser and at ErbTools node.
So usable outside of Ruby, too. Interesting.
Right. And maybe the easiest way to just see what it does is the online playground Marco mentioned.
A playground. Nice. Always good for quickly kicking the tires.
Yeah, an interactive browser thing where you type ERB and see the AST it generates in real time.
Perfect for just getting a feel for it. So wrapping things up a bit, ERB isn't just, another parser. It feels more significant than that.
I agree. Marco calls it a gateway to better HTML templating tooling, and I think that captures it well.
A gateway. I like that.
It's about getting that clearer, structured understanding of your HTML plus ERB mix. And that allows for better editor features, better static analysis, just a smoother workflow.
And that applies whether you're on the latest Rails with Hotwire or maintaining, say, an older application.
Absolutely. Better tooling helps everyone, regardless of the specific stack details. Understanding the view layer better is always good.
So for everyone listening, maybe take a second to think. Those times you've been wrestling with a tricky ERB template,
We've all been there.
could smarter tools, powered by something like ERB, make a difference? Make things faster, catch errors sooner, maybe even open up ways to refactor views you wouldn't have considered before.
It's definitely food for thought.
And if you are interested, Marco encourages folks to check out the docs, try the playground, visit the GitHub repo, get your hands dirty.
Yeah, explore it. And he also mentioned he plans to write more about the technical side soon, the architecture, design decisions behind ERB.
Oh, interesting. Deeper dives into the why.
Exactly, which could give even more insight into its potential. It's definitely a project to watch in the Rails ecosystem.
Absolutely. Exciting stuff happening to improve the developer experience.